You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Riva Yu.
And we are here today to discuss our April 2024 book club pick, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. As always, the Books and Boba podcast is supported in part by our listeners over at patreon.com/booksandboba. So if you'd like to become a bigger part of our podcast and support what we do, head on over. Patreon supporters get access to our members-only Discord server where you can chat with us in real time about our book club picks and various other topics, as well as our monthly bonus podcast, Boba Chats. So yeah, definitely appreciate everyone who supported us so far, and we'd love to see more people join our community. But yeah, let's just get into it because I feel like there's a lot to talk about in this book. I feel like we read Yellowface at like a very, I wouldn't say opportune time, but a very interesting time because we read it concurrently with what's going on in the book industry, especially with the Freitas Moon controversy. And I don't want, like, this isn't a podcast to discuss that controversy, but I'm sure pieces of it will come up because some of the shared plot points are just a little too coincidental. But I'm excited to get into this with you. This is a book that we've been wanting to read for a long time. And we were like, well, we just read Babel.
Yeah, I mean, Yellowface is a book that has kind of come up on our radar so many times because it's so tailored for this podcast. Like it's, you know, we're a podcast that features books by Asian and Asian American authors, and we are in with the publishing tea. We know a lot of the stuff that happened in the book. Like there were a lot of references to actual scandals that we've talked about on our show. And, you know, even though we try not to repeat, duplicate authors on our show because there's just so many Asian authors out there and we want to try to give enough space for them. I just felt like this was a good time to read it. And boy, it was a good time to read it with the big scandal that happened this past, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. I mean, going back to choosing this book, I guess this is the benefit of having our patrons on Patreon. Another reason to join our Patreon is you get to suggest books for us to read. And enough people suggested it that we were like, well, it's what the patrons want, so let's give it to them because it also coincides with a book that we were really interested in reading too. But
also, like, I got tired of so many people asking me, like, what are your thoughts on Yellowface? And I'm like, I have not read it yet.
I feel like if people know us, they already know our thoughts on Yellowface, right?
Because I don't think so.
I don't think my outlook on publishing and diversity and representation changed through reading Yellowface. I definitely learned more about the inner workings of the publishing industry, but it mostly just confirmed what I already suspected. A corporation works.
I mean, I had to keep reminding myself, I'm like, I am not the main demographic for this book, ironically enough. But it's just like, this is meant to be consumed by people who, you know, don't really know the publishing industry, don't really know how they gamify everything, and are probably like loosely aware of like the diversity politics, but like not really. So I was just like, okay, well, for me, who is very much like plugged into these things, nothing is new. So the fact that like a lot of these publications, like these magazines are saying like, oh, like it brings light to like issues that have never come up in like literary novels before. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, like these are things that are very commonplace, but again, not the main audience for this book.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that R.F. Kuang was so like unapologetic and so like she went full at the industry in a book celebrated by industry, which is like the greatest irony. It's like the same irony that's like the biggest show on Amazon Prime right now is Fallout, a show about corporate greed and the terrible consequences it might bring to the world. So it's really funny sometimes to think about how much, I mean, funny and sad, right? How corporations are willing to stick themselves in the eye to make money off of it.
Yeah, I definitely got the feeling where when I was reading the book, I was like, oh, okay, this is personal, because some of the critiques that June says about Athena, or just like rambles on about the publishing industry, I'm like, oh, those are barbs that were, sent to R.F. Kuang throughout her career. So I'm like, okay, she is like kind of responding to a lot of the criticisms that have been thrown at her, a lot of the allegations that have been thrown at her. And it's just very interesting to kind of like read it from an unreliable narrator's voice. And just like, I don't know, like it was very interesting because on one hand, I'm really glad that like R.F. Kuang was self-aware enough to like put those criticisms in her book. But because of her choice of her protagonist and her narrator, I'm like, oh, you can't really go as in depth and be as reflective, in my opinion, in terms of like a lot of the issues that publishing has. Because then it's just like, well, this is a Delulu white woman who who is very cynical and bitter about her career and about people of color in this industry, while like not really knowing like the hurdles that they go through even when they are privileged.
Well, I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still haven't introduced the book yet. So this is our book club discussion. So going forward, all parts of the story, including plot twists, will be on the table. So this is your final spoiler warning. If you have not read Yellowface yet and don't want to be spoiled on some of the more shocking things that happen in the book, you can hit pause right now. Go read the book. And then when you're finished, come back and check out our discussion. We'll be here waiting for you. But yeah, let's get into our discussion proper. Rira, can you start us off, as always, with the book jacket description of Yellowface?
Authors June Hayward and Athena Liu were supposed to be twin rising stars. Same year at Yale, same debut year in publishing. But Athena's a cross-genre literary darling, and June didn't even get a paperback release. Nobody wants stories about basic white girls, June thinks. So when June witnesses Athena's death in a freak accident, she acts on impulse. She steals Athena's just-finished masterpiece, an experimental novel about the unsung contributions of Chinese laborers to the British and French war efforts during World War I. So what if June edits Athena's novel and sends it to her agent as her own work? So what if she lets her new publisher rebrand her as Juniper's Song, complete with an ambiguously ethnic author photo? Doesn't this piece of history deserve to be told, whoever the teller? That's what June claims, and the New York Times bestsellers list seems to agree. But June can't get away from Athena's shadow, and emerging evidence threatens to bring June's stolen success down around her. As June races to protect her secret, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves.
Yeah. What a premise. And it only like scratches the surface of the depths that June will go. I honestly thought someone was going to die by the end of this book. I was actually surprised that first spoiler, like no one really dies except for Athena. Because I was just convinced that like somewhere along the line, like she's going to like kill someone to keep her secret. But I guess that's like the one line she's not. Oh, not that she's not willing to cross, but that she didn't.
Oh
cross,
no, she was
right?
totally willing to cross that line. We'll get there, but yeah, this book kind of gave me like Gone Girls meets Perfect Blue vibes. I don't know, like if it's the same thing with you, Marvin. I mean, you have like the psychological thriller aspect where you're just like, okay, like I feel like there's some kind of like doppelganger like coming after me, and then you also have like Gone Girl, where it's like infamously an unreliable narrator who is a white woman who is commentating on being like a white woman. So I thought that was, I thought the voice was really well done.
Reading this book was like a literary version of doom scrolling, right? Because like I did not like this character. I did not agree with this character. I like hated everything she did, but I could not stop reading because somewhere down the line I was waiting for her to fall, and she did fall several times.
Yeah, I do agree that it does seem like doom scrolling. It is very like much a chronically online type of like I don't know. It kind of read like a script,
Yeah.
Because it was like we're reading parts from like Twitter and like hate threads on like Reddit, and I'm like, yeah, this is like exactly how it feels when you are just like chronically online and you just kind of get sucked into the publishing Twitter side of things.
Not unlike the recent book scandal that happened online. It's just like the stuff that I'm reading is so unbelievable, but the fact that it was happening in real life at the same time just made it all the more eerie. And I had a really great time reading this book. I feel like, Rebecca does have like a very beautiful writing style that she used to do like epics before, but like she really I think she really did a really good job writing like a breezy thriller. Like this book read real fast for me. Like I got through it in like I split this book up into 3 parts to discuss with the book club, and each part, like each third of the book, took me like half a day to read.
I will say, I'm so glad that we did read Babel before reading Yellowface, because I can compare the prose, right? So like Babel, like you said, like, R.F. Kuang is used to writing like epics and very like flowery verses, and Babel was kind of more like very like Charles Dickensy, like very like verbose. And then you have Yellowface, where, like I said, it's like chronically online. It's like looking at like, tweets. Everything is very snazzy and snappy and short. And I'm like, wow, this is like very different from her writing style. And personally, I'm just like, oh, I wonder like if she really needed a break from like the really heavy verbose flowery style that she's like used to writing to write this book.
Nothing like taking a break from writing epic fantasies, like writing a stream of consciousness from a Delulu white woman.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of ways to discuss this book. I kind of see it as there's 3 acts in this book, each following a book or a work by June, right? So the first act is her first book, the manuscript that she stole from Athena Liu. The second act is her second book, Mother Witch, which was the book that she ostensibly wrote on her own, but took inspiration from Athena Liu's journals, and that's how she got caught. And the third book is the meta-narrative that we may or may not be reading about her rise and fall. So I guess let's start off with the first part.
Okay, like before we dive in, I like, because you mentioned like stream of consciousness, like longtime listeners of this podcast would know that is like definitely not my favorite style of writing, but I had so much fun reading it because like stream of consciousness, not really my thing, but like this time around I'm like, oh no, like it's pretty juicy. I'm into it.
Just the way that she like bends herself into like impossible shapes just to justify the shitty things that she's doing. But we'll get into that as we get into the book. There's plenty of opportunities to discuss that. But I want to talk about that first chapter, right? Because anyone who read the premise or the book jacket description of the book knows that Athena Liu does not survive past like probably the first chapter. And so like I was thinking about all the different ways that she might have a freak accident. Choking on a pancake was not on that list.
Pandan pancake. I don't know. That was like a detail where I'm just like, of course, it's a pandan pancake.
What did you think about that first chapter leading up to Athena's untimely demise?
So I listened to this book on audiobook entirely. So I did not read it in physical form whatsoever. And the narrator, Helen Lasser, she did such a great job with the accents and like switching it up. So the moment she started reading Athena's dialogue, I was like, oh, I know exactly what Asian she is. Because like Athena, like it's very clear that she's like a rich Asian, like she's, she went to private schools, like she's East Asian, very highly educated. I mean, not only she graduated from Yale, and then she also had like a master's degree somewhere that was like fully funded. And June goes into this when she kind of like goes on like a rant on how Athena has never suffered before. And Athena kind of has like this fake British accent, or like Aussie like British accent, and I'm like, oh man, I know exactly what type of person this is, and I don't like them. So it was really surprising for me, being like, oh, I don't like the Asian character in this book. And as much as I don't like June either, I feel like I sided with June more because I'm like, man, Athena is so pretentious.
Really? I mean, I felt like
Yeah.
I felt like June from the jump was also very like so the book starts with them at a bar in Georgetown celebrating Athena's Netflix deal. And even from this jump, you can tell that June was just hella jealous of her quote unquote friend and is just there to like feel like she has this like masochistic need to like be in proximity of success so she can feel like she has someone to project her like insecurities onto, but also be in that proximity, right? Like, I don't know. I
mean, for me, I feel like I had a lot more sympathy for June than a lot of people who read this book. And I thought June and Athena's relationship was like very relatable, you know? It's like writing is such a lonely endeavor most of the time, and like it can be really hard to celebrate your wins with people who are in the writing community because there is a lot of jealousy. There is a lot of like pitting one against each other. There's also like tokenism, which we can get into later. But at the same time, those people are the only ones who actually understand the gravity of like your success on like how much of a big deal it is. So it is like this very toxic relationship of just like, I want to be in the room where it happens, and like I understand exactly how talented and how like accomplished you are, but at the same time I fucking hate your guts. And I'm like, wow, that is like a very relatable relationship, something that I have seen in not just like in writing communities, but also like just entertainment circles in general. So I was like, okay, this is a very fun setup that Rebecca has staged for us.
And I do admit that like Athena does, like there's plenty of evidence that states that she keeps June around to have someone to brag to and to feel better about herself. And that, you know, she does have a lot of like pretentious personality traits. But at the same time, you know, I feel like I would have rathered her version of the last one come out than June's, because at the very least, like, you know.
100%. Yeah, because at least it would come from like a more authentic place, you know? Like no matter how much research you do, like you don't have like that lived in experience, which we'll also get into because this book kind of dives into the question of who has the right to tell what types of story. Like, even as an Asian person, are you allowed to write about the suffering of other Asians who have a totally different life experience than you? Because like I said, Athena is super privileged, and a lot of the people that she write about, they're like poor or they went through war, and it's like, you never experienced that. So what gives you the right to talk about it?
I will say that Rebecca Kuang also agrees that Athena is not a great person. So in our Discord server, like I mentioned this time around, we read along, and I made the mention that it really seems like there's a lot of Rebecca in Athena Liu's character. Like they're both very accomplished writers who got published right out of college, telling stories
also coming from privileged backgrounds too.
Yeah, telling stories tangentially related to, you know, our past traumas, right? Like Rebecca's first book, The Poppy War, is essentially an allegory of World War II. And there's like 2 chapters, which is basically a retelling of the rape of Nanjing, right? So there's definitely some parts of her own story that's in Athena. But one of our Discord members, Cherry, went to the West Coast launch event for Yellowface, where R.F. Kuang was asked, like, did she base Athena on herself? And apparently she was very offended at the thought. I'm sure he wrote, she said Athena was someone who closed herself off to other people and writers and didn't care about anyone or anything else but herself. And she was pretentious. So Rebecca denies being Athena, which I do agree on, because if there's one thing that Rebecca is not, is closed off. I know she has tons of like writer friends, people in her circle. In a way, I think there's shades of her career in Athena. But I feel like Athena is like maybe at most like a dark shadow of what Rebecca could have been if she took a different path, right?
Yeah, I will agree that Athena's career trajectory is the same as Rebecca's in real life. But like you said, Rebecca is not closed off. Like she's very active in the Asian American community. I mean, her PhD is in East Asian language and history. And she has always been very vocal about Asian American issues and also just like civil rights movements, like and social justice movements. Like right now, like she has been posting about like all of the campus protests against genocide in Gaza. And I'm like, yeah, not a lot of authors would have the guts to do that. Like she knows that she has privilege and she is using that privilege. She is using her platform. And that's something that we don't see Athena do. She is very self-absorbed. And I can see how Rebecca kind of like poured herself into both characters. So you have like Athena, who is, what people might perceive Rebecca to be because they have like similar career and I guess like external commonalities. But with June, I feel like a lot of the cynicism about publishing, a lot of the exhaustion when it comes to like the grind and figuring out what's my next move. If I don't succeed, will I get another book deal? Like a lot of that stress, I feel like she shares with June. So I would say both of those characters are based on Rebecca, strangely enough.
I do want to comment on the death scene because I'm one of those people who, when I read, I picture the scene in my head, like a scene in a movie or a TV show. You're the same way, right, Rira?
Yep.
Yeah. So during the scene where Athena is choking on her pandan pancake and June is Googling online how to do the Heimlich maneuver, it just reminded me of like, this is the type of scene you would see in like Succession, right? Like a bunch of privileged white people not knowing how to handle simple crises.
I was thinking like Schitt's Creek. I was like, this is totally a scene from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah. So Athena passes away and June takes her manuscript. And so we move into this scene where she is inspired to, I love how she frames it as like, it just happened naturally. I was reading her manuscript and thinking of ways to improve it. And my creative juices started going and she ends up like finishing her manuscript. It's like, I
do like the fact that like Athena gives her the manuscript to peer review while they're like drinking. Yeah. And like Athena is just like, is it okay? Is it good? And like June is just like, she knows it's fucking good, but I am not going to give her like the satisfaction. So she says like, oh, I can't really read when I'm drunk. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, that's such a petty thing to do, but I totally like,
yeah,
freaking agree. I was like, high five. Like, let's not give the person who is kind of humble bragging the compliments that they're craving for right now. But like when she stole the manuscript, when she keeps working on it,
this whole process gave me, I'm pretty sure it gave me hives. Like it was just so frustrating watching her like bastardize this story about like Canadian Chinese history, right? Like as someone who, speaks Chinese fluently, is of the Chinese diaspora, so much of this scene just frustrated me, right? Like the fact that she was fumbling with the names. She went on this big rant about how Chinese names are confusing. Why do they all have the same last name? The part that really like got me was she was complaining that there was like so many characters with an A in their name, like A Gung, A Zhu. And it's like, is a surname? Is it a first name? Like, I don't understand how they differentiate each other. And I was sitting there like, no, it's not A, it's Ah. And it's a way that we give each other nicknames, right? Like, yeah, Liu, like it's just a term of endearment, but she does not have that cultural, know-how, that cultural knowledge, right? And the fact that like there's two characters, there's a Da Liu and a Xiao Liu, and she doesn't understand like what is Da, what is Xiao, what's the difference between them? And like Da is big, Xiao is small. So it's like big Liu and small Liu, right? Like I can understand that, but she couldn't. And so her solution is to replace everyone's names with names that she found in a Chinese baby name selector site.
Oh yeah, when the baby names selector like came up, I was just like, oh no, none of those names are ever correct, or they're like very, very old and out of style. I was surprised that she obsessed over this type of manuscript though, because I'm like, this is so far out of your wheelhouse. It's so much research, right? So I'm like, it's not really a manuscript where you would pick up and be like, I am going to finish this. And I thought it was going to be more of like just like a lot of the literary novels that we have read for book club, not really like heavy historical
I mean, I feel like this is how much she wanted a piece of Athena's success, right? She knows that she herself could not pitch a book that people want, but people want Athena's books for some reason. Like Athena has like keyed in on a specific thing that the publishing industry wants, and what it seems like is cultural generational trauma, right? And that's something that June can't provide on her own because she has no. I mean, she has generational trauma, but it's not the type that the publishing wants right now.
And you know, there is a question of BIPOC authors constantly being asked to publish their traumas, right? That's like the only type of stories that publishing is allowing BIPOC authors to write. But I understand like the need to, when you're so inspired by somebody's work, you decide to kind of like write your own version of it or deep dive into like Wikipedia and like come up with your own work based on it. But I was like, this topic though, it's not like a simple, like when she was like, I just naturally fell into it. I'm like, that's how I know you're an unreliable narrator, because this is not a topic that you would just naturally fall into.
That's true. She did work really hard to become an expert on Chinese diaspora military history. It kind of reminds me of those, that first wave of white chefs who got really into ethnic cuisines, like Rick Bayless doing Mexican cuisine.
But it also like, it was interesting because she queries the book. She sends it to her agent being like, hey, this is what I've been working on. It's a little bit different. And I'm like, a little bit different? It is like, again, not in your wheelhouse.
At the same time, like the ironic thing is it works, right? People are like, this is great. This is exactly what we're looking for. And I love that all the changes that she made to like soften Athena's manuscript totally works, right? She made
it more palatable to white readers.
She did the thing that we're all afraid of when we have like white authors tell stories of like people of color, which is like you've essentially whitewashed it. Like it's whitewashing in the book called Yellowface, right? Like she softened the language so that they don't use any racially sensitive terms to not trigger readers. She turned a white bully from the story into a Chinese laborer that bullies other laborers, and then making the most sympathetic laborer into a white farmer who's sympathetic to the Chinese people. And I think she also introduced like a white like woman savior character, right?
Yeah. I don't really remember the exact details that she brought into the book, but I was just like, yeah, she is definitely whitewashing this book, not really knowing the nuances and the complications that she is introducing into the book. It did make me question. I'm like, oh, why is it suddenly publishable? Like I can understand it being publishable from Athena's hand because it's like, oh, it's a book about Asian suffering by an Asian author. So I kind of found that a little bit puzzling how they're like, oh, yeah, we're definitely going to publish this book by you, white lady, because the writing is so good. And I'm like, but that's not how publishing works. Publishing is very rarely a meritocracy. There's so many good manuscripts out there that like do not see the light of day because that's just not what the market is looking for. So I was like, it's a little bit interesting that this is what the market was looking for, but not from an Asian person. It was looking for in a white person.
I mean, this is where we're introduced to Daniela, who is the editor at the publisher, right? And she's portrayed as like your quintessential girl boss, gatekeep, gaslight type of, corporate executive.
Yeah.
Who I'm pretty sure doesn't really care about that kind of stuff, right?
Their strategy to market the book to make it make sense it's wild.
So this is when June decides to go under like a pen name, right? Or not exactly a pen name, it's her name. But she uses her first and middle name, Juniper Song, which I do love the fact that like she has this name because her mother was a hippie. And it took me a little while to realize Juniper Song meaning like the song of juniper, but it also helps that Song could be an Asian name.
Yeah. And I thought it was also like, I thought it was pretty interesting how like she's not the one who proposed to change her name. It was her publishing team. They're like, well, what if we rebranded you because your first book is like not really what the public is going to associate you with when you come out with this book. So what if we get rid of your last name? Like Juniper Song sounds like a great name. And I'm just like, you know exactly what you're doing. And she knows exactly what you guys are doing. And she's just like, are you trying to make me sound Asian? And they're like, no, absolutely not. I mean, that's your real name, right?
I feel like
right?
they both have to say that in order to claim
It's like
that,
gaslighting each other. It's like, I'm not being racist. Are you being racist? And it's like, no, absolutely not.
And this is when we're first introduced to Candice Lee, who is the assistant editor or associate editor for her book, who like objects to a lot of the book, specifically June's contribution to it. And she ends up getting fired off screen after leaving like a bad Goodreads review, right?
Okay. So with Candice, I was so excited that she was introduced because one, like every year we look at like the diversity industry report by like Lee and Lowe's statistics, and the interns and like the lower level employees are always like the most diverse, right? But because they're in ranks where like they don't really have room for, power, they kind of have to go along with whatever their superiors say, even though they're just like, this is racist. This is like not right. And they can try as much as possible to like get publishing to see the light, but it's not that easy. You're just one person. And you definitely see that struggle through Candice. And I love how she's like, hey, maybe we should get sensitivity readers because I don't know, like June is a white lady and this is a very like painful part of Asian history. And, no matter how much research she did, there's going to be blind spots. And they're like, what about you, Candice? You can be our sensitivity reader. And she's like, I'm Korean, bitch. Like, I'm not gonna be able to like spot check this for you. And not goes behind, but she like leaves a 1-star review. And honestly, like that is something that came out from the headlines because I remember this happening in real life. I remember.
Oh, really?
I remember someone in publishing wrote a 1-star review of a book, and that author hunted them down like by pretty much stalking them, by like cross-checking like LinkedIn's and figuring out like where they lived. And I'm like, wow, this is something that actually happened, and I recognized it. And throughout reading this book, I was just like, wow, Rebecca just really took all the crazy stuff that happened in publishing in the last 3 years and just threw it into this book. And she didn't have to make up anything. All of it was real.
I wonder if she did research or if she was just online so much that she knew of
No,
these
like
stories.
like if you are an author and you are like tangentially part of book Twitter, you know all of the episodes that have happened in this book that were like mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like last year, like the first thing that happened on book Twitter was a fucking murder that happened between 2 authors. So there's that.
Wow.
Publishing gets wild.
Yeah. I like Candice's character as like the voice of reason. And I was sad to see her like unceremoniously removed from the story. But I had a feeling she would come back. And that hunch paid off because she was definitely Chekhov's assistant editor. But the thing is, her concerns ended up becoming valid because once the book was released, it did become a big success. But at the same time, all the concerns that she brought up did come up. A lot of, especially the Asian American reader component, like there was a backlash. Unfortunately, not a big enough backlash to like cause the book to not be successful, which is unfortunately something that is very believable.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of American Dirt by Janine Cummins. And that was like a really big best-selling book. And the backlash was huge because people were saying like, you're not Mexican. And this book is about like a Mexican bookseller who has to escape a cartel. And a lot of it is like rife with stereotypes. And like, even if you did your research, it's like very like harmful and it kind of like out of depth. And I remember when I was working at a bookstore, like she was supposed to be on tour, like so she was supposed to stop by our store, and like the day before she was supposed to show up, like our team was going through like talking points, being like, okay, like if people ask like very insensitive questions or come up as like aggressive, this is how we're going to like handle it. And I'm like, I cannot believe like we are putting this much effort to protect a white author who like clearly did something wrong and deserves to be criticized by her readers, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like June, unsurprisingly, takes all this criticism super personally, right? Because that's just the type of person she is. Throughout the book, she does a lot of reframing, right? Justifying her actions. Like, well, if it wasn't for me, this book would have never been published. So in essence, it's thanks to her that this story is out there being told. So shouldn't she be rewarded for that?
Yeah. And I do like the fact that that question comes back around when she is invited to like this book club meeting by elderly Asians.
Yeah, she gets invited to a Chinese association meeting, which like just even before she arrived, I knew exactly what type of, there's a certain type of like association of like elder Asians I feel like we're all familiar with, right? Because our parents are parts of these associations, or like our aunties. And it's like the polar opposite of like the very online younger cohort of Asian Americans. Like there's like a cohort of like Asian immigrants who are not very online and don't do much research and make these types of mistakes, right? Like they invite someone thinking they're like part of the community and realizing that they're not. And that whole sequence when she goes to Rockville, Maryland, to which is like a Asian part of the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia. And like she gets picked up by this auntie, and the entire ride to the church, the auntie keeps trying to like figure out what kind of Chinese she is. It's so uncomfortable, but so like, it's like ultimate schadenfreude, right?
Yeah. And then like the realization that it's just like a white person, and she's like, oh, like, so you're not Asian, but why is your name Juniper Song? And it's like, oh no, this is a car crash waiting to just happen.
Yeah.
It's so bad. And it was like so uncomfortable to read, but it was so delicious.
Really, it was so funny. I was laughing. I was like, this is the type of thing like, that's what this book does really well, right? Like you're reading the thoughts of a horrible, terrible person who like keeps making excuses for herself and knows she's doing the wrong thing, but can't stop because it's also benefiting her. And like all these like embarrassing, awkward moments don't seem to stop her, but she does feel bad in the moment. And it's both funny and sad, right? Because it's funny to see her being so uncomfortable and being like so shamed, but also knowing that it's not going to stop her.
Yeah. Like the scene where there was like an elderly Chinese man, and he is telling her like, oh yeah, I was one of the laborers for like the World War I efforts, the conflict that you were writing about in this book. Like I'm one of those people. And he's not aware that she is not Asian at all. So he's saying like, so she's like, I don't understand Chinese. I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay. It's your generation. Like, I'm just so glad that my story is being, remembered, and that it's going to be passed on to the next generations, thinking that she is an Asian person who is who's giving voice to his story. But I'm like, no. And she is well aware of it too. Cause like, she's like, oh my God, I just want to leave. Like, who am I to have like written this story? Like it should be Athena who's in my place right now, who is like, receiving this warmth from this Asian American like elderly book club. Like I don't deserve any of this. And I'm just like, I'm glad that you have enough of a conscience that you know that this is wrong, but at the same time it doesn't stop her, right? So I'm like, oh, that's the type of person you are. And I love that flawed character. Like I just love that is who she is. Essentially that was a test.
Yeah.
Because she would have just, if she was a good person, she would have just come clean right then and there.
I mean, you take that in contrast with her interactions with the younger Asian American component who are attacking her online, who are, trying to call her out, and the indignant posture she takes against them, right? Like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't write? It's thanks to me that this book is even out there. I did enjoy like all the commentators. You had your bookfluencers, your editors, like. There was that one, Adele Sparks Sato, who like, she's there. Well, Sato's Japanese. Why are you mad about it?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, like her being like, I thought Japanese people hated Chinese people. And I'm just like, that's a joke that only lands if you're an Asian person. Okay. It doesn't land when you are not part of this community at all.
Yeah.
But I do love how she kind of gets exposed because I forgot how she got exposed. Do you remember?
Well, I mean, so publicly, she is the last person to see Athena Liu alive. So there's obviously people, conspiracy theorists, who think that she has something to do with Athena's death, or she stole Athena's words, because as the internet does, there's a lot of comparisons, people like comparing the two proses, and there's no way that June would have wrote this. This is more like what Athena wrote, right? Again, very believable things.
I just remembered. Okay, so it was the Twitter handle Ghost of Athena.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like one Twitter person comes up with the receipts being like, hey, isn't this too much of a coincidence? Like there's no way that this white lady wrote this entire book by herself. Even if she was inspired by it, there's just no way. And I just love how she could just leave it alone and she would be fine. But the type of person that she is, she cannot leave it alone.
Well, because she's afraid. The only person who would know this is Athena herself, right? And so she becomes obsessed. Someone's trying to take her down, right? Because if someone exposes her, she's afraid she'll lose everything that she quote unquote earned. And yeah, she goes to her brother-in-law who's in IT and gets him to trace the IP address. Oh, no, she sets up a honey trap.
No, she sets up a honey trap.
That's true. That's
if she
right.
went, I was just oh, it's one thing to just ask your IT brother-in-law to do the work for you, but the IT brother-in-law is that's kind of illegal. I don't know. And she's just oh no, don't worry. I'll give you the IP address. You don't have to hunt it down. You just have to tell me where it's from generally. And
it turns out to be Athena's ex-boyfriend, who is a different flavor of toxic white author, right?
Yeah. Toxic white man.
What's his name? Jeffrey Carlino. Yeah.
Attractive, white, has kind of everything going for him, but also he's mediocre. So therefore, he's not going as far as he would like.
And hella yellow fever.
Yeah. But I just love how his accusations, there was no, he was doing a lot of guesswork. So June could have just left it alone, and she didn't leave it alone. She hunted him down. She knew exactly who it was because she's I only know one person in Fairfax who knows Athena and me, so it has to be this person. She arranges a meeting, and he tries to blackmail her, and I'm oh my god, what a scum thing to do. But her being no, I've recorded this conversation, so I am now blackmailing you, blackmailer. I have to say, I was cheering her on when she was no, I'm not going to be cowed by you. I am these are my terms. You are going to follow it, or else your career is going to be annihilated. And your career was already annihilated in publishing. Now you are working in TV. So if you want to close that door forever, go ahead, expose me. And I'm yeah, that is girl boss behavior that I can sort of cheer on. The problematic part of me can be yes.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that we have tiers of terrible white people in this book that we will root for tier one of horrible white person because the other tier is so much more problematic. I mean, definitely June is the hero of the story, for better or worse, at least in her own head and for the purposes of the story. But yeah.
I also, before we move on to the second book that she works on in this book, I just loved how she was on this diversity panel. She was on this panel about Asian American books. I don't know what the specific panel name was, but literally she's the only white person, and it's just all other Asian authors. And was it Diana Chu? That was the name of the performance
I think
artist?
She was one of the. I think that was the performance artist.
One of the panelists. She's you're the one who fucking stole a dead Chinese author's manuscript. We all know it. Shots fired. And I'm oh dang! I would have paid to have been at that panel just to witness that in real person.
Yeah, and it's just the height of hubris that she even showed up on that panel, thinking that she should be
deserved
there.
it,
right?
Earned it. I'm what? Also, shame on the organizers for actually thinking that was okay, which is a problem that we see repeatedly.
I mean, the thing with these big organizing bodies is sometimes they're not exactly, either they're not in touch with the discourse, or they don't have the courage to uninvite someone because it might make them look bad. I guess one last thing before moving on from The Last Front is she takes a meeting with film producers who want to option her book. I think it's probably modeled after an A24, let's say, right? Like,
no, it wouldn't be A24 because like those two like producers were very clueless on what representation is in Hollywood.
Right.
I feel like A24, we can give them like more more
But
leniency.
like a production company who in their portfolio has like at least one Chinese director who is like renowned. And she takes this meeting with them. And this meeting stood out not only because the two white producers are just terrible, terrible people, but like this is where Rebecca drops in a Babel quote, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, while they were talking, the producers talking about all the ways they might change the story, add in some more white characters.
Oh, the translator
and it's like,
quote.
yeah, he's like, oh yeah, like adaptation is a form of translation. And an active translation is an act of betrayal, which is like, I was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio point, like that's from Babel. But it was funny that like throughout the entire conversation about the film adaptation and the follow-ups, that Chinese director that she really wants to be a part of the film never says anything. She like is just staying away from this whole thing, right? Which
good on that director. She knew.
Yeah.
She knew. But I like love how like June is just like these two white producers don't get it. Like they don't see how problematic it is for them to like, I don't know, have like a love interest scenario in the movie adaptation with like a white dude. And I'm just like, wow, even a white lady can see it, but these two white dudes do not.
I mean, she sees it, but she doesn't do anything about it, right? Like,
I mean, she wants the money.
Yeah. If the movie deal came through and they told her to write that character, she would write that character, no questions. And she would say, "Oh, you know, there probably was someone, a sympathetic white lady back then."
Yeah, but you know, her book reaches, you know, literary acclaim. It doesn't win any awards, but it gets shortlisted, and then, you know, the tension kind of dies down, and she has to like, you know, work on another book because that's how publishing works. You know, you're only as good as your next book or something similar to that.
And the success of The Last Company has pretty much given her carte blanche to write whatever she wants, right? Like she has
Well, also like she has to write a new book because people are like, you fucking copied Athena Liu's manuscript. Like, even though they don't have proof, there's these dirty rumors around, right? So the only way to really move on with her career is to write something new and hope that it's good enough for people to kind of forget about her dirty past. And this kind of like reminds me of like Cassandra Clare and a bunch of like other authors who have had like plagiarism allegations, where it's just like, you know, the best way to move forward is to just come up with something new and hope that people forget.
And so she does so with her second book, which, you know, after a long period of writer's block, she finally becomes inspired, ironically, while reading Athena's journals.
She says, she's like, I should have quit while I was ahead. I double dipped. And I was like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, no, girl, why would you do that? And I hate the fact that I like rooted for her, but I was like, why would you do this? You could have literally written anything. Like,
yeah,
why?
And, you know, maybe it's part of her, like she has a complex that she thinks because she owes Athena her success, she needs her like as her muse, right? I can see different rationalizations of it. But
I mean, yeah, it comes down to insecurity, you know, because it's just like, oh, the one time I was successful was because I used Athena as a scaffolding. And I'm like, yeah, it's a lot easier to rewrite someone's work rather than create a world of your own from scratch. So I can understand the insecurity, but I'm just like, girl, you're a writer, aren't you? Like, you wrote a novel before stealing Athena's book. Like, you could have literally written anything, but I was just shaking my head throughout the entire chapter.
And so she writes a new book ostensibly about her own relationship with her mother, but built off the, you know, 2 paragraphs that she found in Athena's journals that she, you know, builds off of. And almost instantly after this is published as a novella, so it's not a full book, it's a novella, right? She immediately gets called out again because she forgot to change the first 2 paragraphs. Like she left the first 2 paragraphs of Athena's prompt as the first 2 paragraphs, not knowing that it was part of a short story that Athena had submitted at an Asian American Writers Workshop fellowship years ago.
Yeah, that's the thing about writing. You know, you're constantly like rewriting as well. So I don't know, the fact that like she double dipped and like didn't even think about like, oh, maybe Athena like workshopped this before. But then I guess that was like the whole reason why she felt safe, because Athena was the type of writer who like held onto her work so tightly and was closed off and didn't really you know, like was afraid to kind of show the world her work before it was even ready. So the fact that like she did have an iteration of this book, of this novella before, I was like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. And it just so happens that I think it was Adele Sato who was in that workshop with her, and so had like the manuscript of Athena's version of the story. And this is the part where I was like feeling I was in the Twilight Zone, because I read this part of the book right after the Freida's Moon stuff came out online. And the fact that Freida's Moon was caught in the act of like workshopping a manuscript with the same two first paragraphs of a manuscript that they submitted in one of their previous aliases.
I mean, I wish we can get into more of the Freida's Moon stuff, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't know what the deal is, but because I have COVID right now and I'm kind of like in a fever haze. Just like briefly, there was a mainstream author. She went by the name of Freida's Moon, but then after like some sort of controversy, like she, you know, had to like make a bunch of pen names to become an indie author.
Well, I think, no, Freida's Moon was the latest pen name. The original name was
the Freida's Moon was
yeah.
what? Okay. So, but like pretty much like with their new pen name, they had multiple, but like with the newest pen name, they pretended to be a Latin author. So a Latin and trans author. So they were just like, oh yeah, I'm part of this community, and it's like, you know, what white people don't really get about our suffering. Like I'm not even joking. Like there are like tweets where she like, as like this avatar, she talks about like how racist white people can be towards the Latin community.
It was such an experience reading this book and reading the real life like scandal uncovering of this person who essentially got caught multiple times, but still found a way to move on with their career.
Yeah. And also like, not only did they get caught multiple times, like it just feels like they like, because the safest thing to do is to come up with a new pen name and just to stay offline, you know, or like don't post anything not related to your book. But this person like would post the same photos. It was almost like they were hoping to get caught and hoping to get negative press. And it was kind of like the same energy with June.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you could just leave things alone and be safe, but they just can't help themselves. And it reminded me of Kate Corain as well, where I'm like, why are you creating so many like burner accounts on Goodreads and pretending to like be other people and review bomb your peers when you already have like a multi-figure book deal? You have like an exclusive deal with like a book subscription partnership. I'm just like, what is with these white ladies who coincidentally are queer? I'm like, what makes you think that you can just do this?
And I feel like Rebecca's book does a decent job of diving into like what these people could have been thinking about, and that's just how to protect their careers, their quote unquote livelihoods, right? Like there's a certain type of, I think, psychology developed growing up with the expectation of being privileged, that you will do whatever it takes to maintain that sometimes illusion of like privilege.
And also like having like this constant like victim mindset, you know? And it's just like, I've seen it with a lot of like white queer creators where they're like part of a marginalized community, but also they don't have like that same sense of warmth from their community as like a lot of like BIPOC communities have, because there is a lot of like history of oppression and there's a lot of shit that we deal with. But to outsiders, it kind of looks, I don't know, it kind of looks cozy. It kind of looks like we have more attention and more opportunities because we're different. And it's like, do you not see the statistics? I mean, publishing is still 75% white as of like a study from 2023.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, whatever.
we have a seat at the table, but it's only like one seat amongst like a sea of white authors.
Yeah, and whatever perceived attention it seems like diversity has right now, it's still just a drop in the bucket in the aggregate of the history of publishing and media.
Yeah, and also like a lot of those promises about, oh, we're going to hire more diverse people and have them be like in managerial positions and publish more books by diverse authors. What happened to their books? We haven't really seen them. Like, they've kind of dropped off in the face of the earth. So really empty promises in the end.
Yeah. So in response to this fresh wave of criticism, you can tell this is like Rebecca is a little cynical about the state of the publishing industry, because like in her book, the publisher's response is just, it'll just die down. Don't worry about it. What's your next book? Right? Like, they're unfazed by the controversy because they know, like, at the end of the day, those aren't the people that they're marketing to anyways. Juniper Song is now a best-selling author and people will buy Juniper Song books.
Yeah, I mean, they keep mentioning of like, oh, Twitter, like, no, like, that's such a small slice of your audience. Like, you know, just shut off social media. But then with June, it's like, but like this industry, like the people who actually know the gravity of like my work and like understand what like authors actually go through, they're all on book Twitter, they're all on book Discord.
Yeah.
So really, I want that validation from that community and not from the right-wing community that you guys have managed to like swindle to buy my book.
Right. There was a backlash to the backlash with The Last Company where like right-wing like talk radio types were getting their followers to buy Juniper Song's The Last Company, a book about Chinese Canadian laborers to own the libs. And I thought that was also...
That's
that was
literally what happened with American Dirt. Like, a lot of right-wing people bought it. And a lot of, like, people who did not know about the, like, controversy.
Yeah.
They were just like, yeah, this is a best-selling book. I'm going to read it. And I'm like,
I mean,
did you not hear?
Yeah. And, you know, if Juniper wanted to be just like a successful working author, she could have just done that. But she wants the validation. She wants the love that comes with the adoration that comes with like being a successful author online. You know, maybe that's more of like an indictment on just how social media has warped our sense of accomplishments too, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that people will take away from reading this book if they're not familiar with publishing is that publishing is a game, okay? Like, everybody is pitted against each other. It's all about like knowing the right people, knowing how to market your book, knowing how to market yourself. I mean, like, the fact that with like Juniper like Song's like author photo for like The Last Front, they were like, we need to make her a little bit tanner. We need to like have some we need to have like a professional photographer to like make her look as attractive as possible. And I'm like, yeah, these are all games in terms of like getting like bookfluencers to latch onto your book, getting like deals with like partnerships. I'm like, yeah, this is a business. And it really sucks when you think about how like indie authors and mid-list authors, their books are probably just as good, but they're not getting the support that these big time authors are getting because the industry has already decided that their book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. It's a rigged game.
So in the wake of the second set of scandals, June is inspired once again to write a story to essentially reclaim the narrative, right? This is like she writes what I can only imagine is a version of the book we're reading. So kind of like a meta narrative of the whole scandal with The Last Front and Mother Witch from her point of view. And it's funny because once again, she is inspired to write based on her relationship with Athena. Like, she can't do anything that doesn't have something to do with Athena, right? Like, she wants to set the record straight about her relationship with Athena. And this is when she starts reflecting on her own. I don't know if it's like part of her brain trying to justify things, but she talks about how Athena stole her life story, right? From like her first year in college, she was, sexually assaulted, and a year later, Athena publishes her story with a character and story that's surprisingly like the one that she told her. And that kind of reminded me of Bad Art Friend a little bit.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I thought about Bad Art Friend and I was like, oh my God, Rebecca, like really just taking all the publishing scandals and just putting it in this book. It must have been like so much fun for Rebecca to just like pick and choose like what crazies she could put into the book, because you really can't make this shit up. Because I think for some people who don't know that these are based off of real events, they're gonna be like, that's a little much, it's a little crazy. Like, no, for us, we're like, the thing that happened in real life is crazier. So it's really fun for us to read.
Yeah. So this is the last act of the story. She's writing her memoir to talk about the scandal on her side of the story. But her writing groove is disrupted by the appearance of Athena's ghost that she keeps saying. She's seen Athena, like someone who looks like Athena, throughout the book, pop up like at the Asian American Association she goes to. And she sees her on the streets and it starts messing with her. I think, this is when Athena's Instagram comes back up.
Yeah.
Like Athena's Instagram is reactivated, but it's only following her. And it's like essentially like goading her, right? It's like taunting her with like creepy AI pictures.
It's Athena's original, it's Athena's actual Instagram account. And she has blocked everyone except for June. So no one can comment, no one can see except for June's account. And I was like, that's so clever. Who the hell did this? And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, it has to be Candace. Freaking knew it was going to be Candace.
Yeah. And we have like a grand, like I didn't expect this this book to have like a parlor scene where like everything is revealed, but they have one at the Exorcist steps in, I think, Georgetown, right? Or Foggy Bottom.
Yeah.
I did love that this book took place in DC because having lived there for a couple of years, like I could totally relate to I knew where everything was. I love that when June met with Jeff in Georgetown, she goes on this big old rant about like talking shit about Georgetown. I'm like, yep, that's what we do. We talk shit about Georgetown. And then there's that scene where she tries to go to DC Chinatown for inspiration.
Oh my God. It was so cringe.
And like immediately I was like, you don't like DC Chinatown is barely a Chinatown. Like you go to DC Chinatown, it's like you see a Dunkin' Donuts with Chinese words under it. It's all like American brand franchises with like Chinese signs. It's like it's barely a Chinatown. Like you have to go to the side streets to maybe find like a family restaurant. And she does find one, and then she like I was aghast that she didn't even know what a soup dumpling was.
Yeah, I was like, at this point, everyone should know what it is because she's younger than us. She's definitely Gen Z. So I'm like, you should know what soup dumpling is. But what I thought was really interesting was, you know, she was having a writer's block and she was like, I can't steal more of Athena's works because that's just like a dead end now. So let me see if I can get inspiration from Chinatown, because I already did a lot of research about China, so this should be like second nature if I decide to like write a new story. And in a way it's still a form of stealing. but Athena at the same time, she goes through the same method. She steals, she excavates from other people's pains and other people's stories. And I guess that is like a question of ethics in writing that pops up a lot. It did remind me of like some of the assignments that I did get in writing school. Like one of the assignments that I had was to eavesdrop on a stranger's conversation and to like write it down and then adapt it into a more interesting scene.
I feel like that's training to be a bad art friend.
I mean, that's the kind of homework that they gave us. And it goes to show, like, just because you can write something doesn't mean that you have the right to write something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious your thoughts as like a Korean American person, because they mentioned that Athena's first book was based on the story of like Korean War veterans, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if it was a book or if it was like a short story thing, but yeah, like she went to like a war museum or war exhibition and read a lot about like the war prisoners and their experiences, and then pretty much wrote that out on page. And Athena's ex-boyfriend Jeff, they were like, yeah, that's like a form of parasitic writing, and it's not cool, man. It's like, yeah, I mean, it does make you question, like, who has the right to write other people's sufferings. I would have felt pretty uncomfortable if somebody else who is not Korean wrote about that stuff. I mean, it's one thing to write it in like a nonfiction way, but to like morph it into fiction, to dramatize someone else's pain for your own like entertainment or for your own gain. I'm like,
Yeah.
is it right though? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, just goes to show, like, she didn't make Athena out to be a saint neither. Like, she also was engaging in questionable publishing practices. Not to say that she deserved to die and have her work be stolen either, but, you know, like, this industry makes everyone kind of complicit in some form of.
Well, it also seemed like she bought into the tokenism of publishing, you know, like her being like, I don't want to be associated as like an Asian author. Like, I don't want to be a mentor to other Asian authors. Like it's like, I'm more than that label. And I'm just like, yeah, but also.
Yeah, speaking of mentor, I guess we'll get back to the confrontation on the steps, like, eventually. But we totally skipped over the chapter where she is a mentor at like a writing program to mentor young Asian American high schoolers, right? And it starts off fine. They have a good time. And then once like she's kind of outed as the Juniper song, like she like viciously tears into like all these kids' insecurities.
Yeah. I was like, that was not cool. That was rough to watch. I thought you were going to mention how she had that like one-on-one mentorship with,
right. She did have another mentee, right, through another program.
Yeah, through another program, she was mentoring a young Asian American writer, and you know, she was in the querying process, and Juniper never put her camera on, so it was like only through voice. So her mentee thought that she was an Asian American writer naturally, and you know, she was sharing her insecurities, being like, "Oh, I don't know if, you know, my story is something that publishing is willing to take a risk on." And then June says, "Oh no, being diverse is really in right now. This is the type of story that publishing will want to publish right away. Yeah. You're so lucky for being Asian and for being young." And like,
what a weird,
immediately her mentee
say,
is
right?
just like, that's a really weird thing to say. And I'm like, that's a red flag. You should have known right away that is not.
Yeah, that's someone who is either not Asian or someone who is just out of touch.
Yeah, someone who has drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So, man, just so many uncomfortable exchanges stemming from the fact that she's just pretending or not pretending to be Asian, neglecting to clarify that she's not Asian, which is just as bad.
Just as bad.
So we end on a confrontation on the steps. Candace has rigged cameras everywhere to like get a confession out of Juniper. She like uses like some sort of AI voice, text to speech with Athena's voice. It was probably the most like literary scene in the book, right? The big like the pressure of guilt is too much for June, and so she like, it reminded me of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Like she just like breaks down and admits to all her crimes. Mm-hmm. And then Candace Lee steps out and reveals that this is all her plan to get back at her for ruining her life. And it's just so funny because like during this scene, June's like, who? What did I do? I didn't ruin your life. Totally like conveniently forgetting that she was the reason why Candace was probably fired.
Yeah, and it's not just that she was fired. She was blacklisted by like the publishing houses as CEO. And it's like, yeah, that's how it works in publishing. It is such a small industry. And if like all it takes is just, you know, someone higher up being like, oh, this person is challenging to work with, and you're immediately put on the chopping board. And it's so hard to get into publishing, especially if you are a person of color, because it's like, not only are you going up against this very white institution, it's also an institution that pays very little in one of the most expensive cities in the world. They have this mentality of like, oh, you should be grateful for what we give you. And that pressure is even doubled when you're a person of color, because you're like, oh, you should be grateful that you have a seat at the table. So when that seat is taken away, it's like, it feels like everything has been taken away from you. And I can see why Candace is like, you ruined my life. Like, this was a career that I wanted to have, but you kind of like, just because of like petty jealousy, you decided to ruin it.
Yeah.
Just because I wrote a 1-star review on your book that, that I did, like, it was like not office hours.
Yeah.
Like,
just because I suggested that maybe we should have some sensitivity readers for your book.
Yeah.
And so after this big like literary gotcha moment, they have a scuffle on the step. This is when I thought that someone was going to die. Like either June or Candace was not leaving those steps alive. And the fact that like June was like, you know what? I would kill her. And knowing that even if Candace died, she could probably get away because she's a white woman.
And I do love how Candace had her own plans of like, if something went bad, then like she would still like somehow come out on top as well. So I'm like, two crafty bitches, like they're,
and the fact
fun.
that like the fight ends with June slipping and like knocking herself out was just, in a book full of self-owns, the fact that it ends with a physical self-own was pretty poetic.
And then pretty much what happens towards the end is like Candace releases not releases the tapes, but releases portions of the tapes that...
she gets a New York Times article telling all, and then gets a book deal with the publisher that fired her.
Yeah, for the tell-all that, she hasn't started writing yet.
Yeah. And June is now inspired once again to write her version of the story because June is the hero of this book, and June will never give up. What a heroic end to this tale. Like
the fact that like she is continuing to plot, being like, okay, if I like change the story like this, it's going to be more marketable, and then I'll have this person play me in the Hollywood deal. Like it is a spiral of Delulu, but at the same time, I'm like, girl, yeah, like you are the definition of like persistence because you just don't know when to quit. So like the fact that she is so gung-ho about writing, like even though it leads her to like plagiarism and doing some very problematic things, as a reader, I still enjoyed that part of her character. So I guess
that's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it ironically because I did just want her to have
her comeuppance.
Yeah. And the sad part is I don't think even if she did have her comeuppance, she never accepts it. She never changes. It was satisfying in that like she'll never change and this is just how the world is. But it's unsatisfying in that like she didn't have a fall, right? The book ends with her resolve to never give up, which while realistic is also a little like, it's sad, right? Like I asked people on Discord what they thought of the ending, and Couple Jen, one of our members, wrote, somewhat expected in that I didn't think it was going to be a complete win or loss for any side. So I was bracing myself. I don't really like scare tactic confessions, but I suspect the scene at the end was intentional. R.F. Kuang seems to always hint at evidence-based gotcha moments. I wonder if that's R.F. Kuang's way of poking fun at this literary trope. I found June's literal fall so funny. As the villain of the story, the injuries are deserved, but I'm glad she didn't die. I would have been so upset if she gained martyr status. The continued battle and profiting from she said stories feels unfortunately accurate.
Yeah. We have a comment from Nina on Goodreads, and they said they went into this book completely blind, which I found like very interesting because I feel like this book has been hyped up and people have been talking about it forever. And she said, I knew the story would be decent because I enjoyed Babel. The book was a great introduction to book talk, publishing drama that I had previously not been aware was even a thing.
Hey, good on you for not being online all the time. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, you have a healthier mindset than us. She said the main character is incredibly unlikable, and reading her takes on Chinese culture, food, etc. made me want to throw the book across the room, which definitely speaks to how well the character is written. I completed the book feeling like I had learned something about the world of publishing, even though the lesson was that I needed to take my rose-tinted glasses off. Nothing in this world is merit-based, despite how much we want to believe it is. And I'm like, you're right. Publishing is not a meritocracy as much as we would like to believe it is. And Nina says in conclusion, after the deep Reddit rabbit holes post-read, I learned that there were other readers that wished that Kuang had gone deeper into the privilege that is the baseline for authors to even write a book, nonetheless have a successful book. But that didn't bother me as much. And I'm on the same camp. I'm like, I kind of wish that it kind of went deeper into privileges, the tiers, like Athena being East Asian, wealthy, highly educated. How did that give her a leg up from all the other Asian authors? I kind of wanted to see more of that dichotomy, but within the constraints of the characters in the book, I understand. I
feel like there could have been more to be said on that front, but it would have sounded maybe contrived through the voice of June. This entire book is told in first person and through June's point of view.
Well, the thing is, June is poor. Well, not poor, but she's working class. She had to work multiple jobs. She comes from a family where, they've always had to put practicalities first, and the arts was kind of considered not sensible. Even when she reaches the New York Times bestselling list, her mom and her sister are like, so when are you going to quit writing? Even though they know how much money she made from that book. They're like, just quit.
I mean, I'm saying more talking about the nuances of Chinese history through June's voice. The parts where she talks about being an expert on Chinese history was already uncomfortable and grating. Having more of that would have been, I don't know. It would have made more sense if this was more of a dual narrative, if there was another point of view from the community where you can dive into that. As a story that follows June's spiral into depravity, I feel the pacing was great. I could not stop reading. It was actually hard for me to take breaks in the middle to go with the reading schedule that I set up because I just wanted to know, surely she can't get away with it this time.
In a way, I kind of wanted her to get away with a lot because I'm like, oh, this is going to be some creative shit that she has to claw her way out of. I'm like, what are some crazy white women plans that she has in store for me? Because that just means that I have more pages to read.
Yeah.
I was actually really surprised that the expose on her not being Asian and her stealing Athena's manuscript came so early in the book, because that's the first third of the book, and we said this book can be split into 3 acts, right? So I was like, oh wow, we're getting there pretty fast. So what is going to happen next? I'm curious.
I mean, that just goes with Rebecca's thesis that scandals don't matter. What people, what the internet think doesn't matter. If you've been anointed as the next publishing darling, you're going to be successful regardless. It's really hard to, unless you do something super self-sabotaging, like we've seen this year, it's easy to sweep stuff under the table, right? It's all about how you frame things. And this book is all about who gets to frame, who gets to tell our stories.
Yeah. Well, this was a very long conversation, and we didn't even get to everything that we wanted to talk about, but I think we can leave it there.
As always, if you have more thoughts about the book or our conversations, please let us know either on our Goodreads forums or if you're a Patreon supporter on our Discord. I'm sure we'll be talking about this book for years to come, but I'm glad that we finally read it. So now that we can, now we can put our Asian American book people hat back on proudly.
Yeah, it's been quite annoying having people who are not big book readers ask me oh, have you read Yellowface yet?
I know.
I feel like you're going to love it. And I'm like, I really hate the fact that you are recommending me this book simply because I am Asian and simply because I also read books. But
yeah, I mean, now that we've read Yellowface, we have to read Crying Age Smart too, right? That's next on the we should probably read this book list.
Those are the 2 books that get recommended to me so often. I had one friend who was like, hey, so have you heard of Crying Age Smart? I just bought it off of a Target sale. And I'm like, girl. It came out years ago. It is so.
Yeah.
I mean, but then that puts me in a place where I'm I sound so pretentious. And it's no, it's just I have to just accept the fact that I am not part of the mainstream audience. I'm always going to be in the fringes. So.
I mean, part of our thesis is to uplift all the books written by Asian American authors. That it includes, I feel if you already know of a book before us, or if you're recommending a book to us, it probably doesn't need the extra boost. Although I'm so glad that we do cover those books on this podcast as well, because I mean, personally speaking, I'm a big fan of Rebecca, and I'm just always happy to read one of her books.
Oh yeah, Rebecca is a very talented writer, in my opinion. And the fact that she was able to juggle writing so many manuscripts and do research and go to school, and now she's also wedding planning. I'm like, how are you able to do it all? Like, I am really impressed. I'm really looking forward to whatever she is working on next, because this book has really proven to me that she is a very versatile writer.
Yeah. With that'll do it for our discussion of Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Really quickly, it is May, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. So for this month's book club pick, which I was in charge of choosing, we're going to go with a historical fiction novel. We are reading Kill Her Twice by Stacey Lee. It is a YA noir mystery about a Chinese film star who was murdered in 1930s Los Angeles. So combining a lot of our favorite things: murder mystery, pre-war LA, noir, and Asian American, I guess, film representation. So I'm really excited. We've been wanting to read something from Stacey Lee for a long time. She is, the OG Asian American historical fiction writer, and glad to be able to get into her latest book. So we'll be discussing Kill Her Twice at the end of May. If you are on our Discord, we will be once again reading along every week. So check out the Discord to see our reading schedule. But yeah, excited to get into this.
Yeah, Stacey Lee, OG. Was wondering when we would finally read one of her books. It's been 6-7 years since we started this podcast,
it's been a while,
and we've already known about her since Downstairs Girl, which came out back in like 2017, I think. No, 2019. Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised that we didn't get into Downstairs Girl, because you're Atlanta girly. Like, I felt like there was a connection there.
Yeah, I mean, there is a connection there. I did really want to read it, and I do have it on my Kindle, but I feel like I should just read it on my own. Yeah. Stacey Lee, she's the author of Under a Painted Sky, Outrun the Moon. Those are the two books that I've heard the most about. And it's really awesome that she's making Chinese American history like more accessible to a younger audience. And she's been around for quite a while, so she has quite the catalog. So I'm really excited to read this book with you guys.
I feel like it's a good spiritual successor to reading Yellowface, right? Like, this is Chinese American fiction the way it was meant to be read. But yeah, looking forward to discussing the book with you all at the end of the month. But until then, hope you all have a great Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. We'll be back next week with an author chat with Samir Ahmed about her new novel, This Book Won't Burn, another very timely release. So until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu, and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba, and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Charlene Kay. I'm a musician, songwriter, and guitarist. Growing up, I loved music. Whether it was pop, acoustic, emo, I ate it all up. But as a Chinese American kid living in Scottsdale, Arizona, I also felt isolated, never really seeing artists who looked like me or shared my experiences. So, after years of performing on stages all over the world, I wanted to create a space to highlight the amazing Asian musicians who I knew were out there, just not always getting played on the radio. That's why I started Golden Hour, a podcast where Asian singers, songwriters, instrumentalists, and music producers share their personal stories, and it's a space for you to discover your new favorite artist. Listen to Golden Hour with me, Charlene Kay, wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.